Welcome everyone to a new episode of Ask the Author. This is Lucky Fire Rabbit from DA, also Shadoobie on fanfiction.net, and we're going to be discussing a less than new story that I completed about almost 3 years ago now, titled Blood Tithe. It was kind of a quiet success, I guess you could say. It got a lot of reviews, but I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal. Not as big of a deal as maybe Feral or 13. But then again, I just didn't have a whole lot of fans yet, I guess. It's kind of hard to describe, but for me personally, it was a tremendous success. I couldn't even begin to fathom the milestones I was able to reach just writing it. Never mind the over 100 pieces of artwork, complete pieces that I was able to produce in light of this fan fiction, some of which were a pivotal part of getting me accepted into art school. So I have to give this story credit where credit's due, even though it's a little aged now. It deserves it. It has allowed me to grow as a writer and an artist, just as a creative entity in so many ways that I have to share it with you, and hopefully some of the topics I cover and some of the discussions I present will be able to help you aspiring authors, or anybody who just likes to talk shop, to try new things and maybe how to go about them in a way that best fits you. So Blood Tithe. I got the title from a Magic the Gathering card from the, I want to say, the Innistrad block. Magic the Gathering did a wonderful thing in restoring my hope for vampires in popular culture. Stephanie Meyer damn near ruined it for me, to be completely honest. Twilight makes me ill. I'm sorry. I tried and I just couldn't. To me, vampires should be predators. Anne Rice and Bram Stoker really towed that fine line between, horror and sappy romance, and they were masters of it. But Stephanie Meyer just kind of blew all that out of the water for me personally. I could have done it better myself. But that was kind of one of the driving forces behind the story, is bringing vampires back as predators, and we'll get more on that here in a moment. But what birthed the brainchild of Blood Tithe, the seed, was the less than satisfying ending of Final Fantasy XIII. Minutes after I was able to fully process the dismay and confusion and disappointment of watching the credits roll, I was like, no, I can't do that. No, I can't. This cannot be. You spent so many hours, learning about these characters and coming to care about them and to care about their conflicts and their dreams and their hopes, and to sympathize with their mission, and then all of a sudden, they're gone. So it's like, what? That's it? No. No. And this was long before I heard about a sequel and now a trilogy. So I was like, no, I have to fix this. I have to fix this for me, or else I can't live. So yeah, that kind of gave birth to what is now an over 500 page. It's just, to me, that's gigantic. This over 500 page just thing. There really is no word to limit it to, for me anyway, because I guess because I look at it differently than my readers do. I mean, it's my child. It's a building block. It's a triumph for me, and it's whoa. I'm floored by what I was able to do with it. But and along with caring about these characters and caring about the story and the game and what happens after, I was also kind of in love with Magic the Gathering at the time, and I was like, I love the fantasy elements of this game. I love how real the art makes it. I love how the cultures are fleshed out, even through the limited medium of trading cards. And I was like, ugh, I have to do this. Their vampires are so cool. I could make a culture out of this. I could flesh this out, along with fleshing out the story of 13 for me. And not just the story, but Pulse itself. I felt like we were given an incredibly limited scope of Grand Pulse, and there was the potential for so much exploration, so much just learning about the cultures that used to inhabit the planet, and other places, other terrains, other landscapes. And I was like, I have to do this. This is something I need to explore, and I need to take people with me, whether they like it or not. And fortunately for me, a lot of people did like it. So, but yeah, I felt like I needed to combine these elements and test myself, see what I could do, and not just in a narrative sense, not just in a character crafting sense, but in a drama sense. There were so many things that I was uncomfortable dealing with as a writer. There were things I was uncomfortable writing and considering, lots of taboos and vices that I had never approached before. And I was like, I need to test myself. I need to graduate as a writer, and I got to take this test. So, yeah, technically it was cheating because I wrote the test myself, but that's beside the point. Excuse me. I have my notebook here to help me keep track of things, so if I look away, that's why. But one of the things I've given myself a habit to doing is creating original characters for my fan fictions, and I feel like that kind of adds my personal signature to the work, and just it also gives an opportunity to explore canon characters further, because with canon characters, for the most part, you know what to expect in a story from your canon characters. It's the original characters that you have to look out for, because they're going to give you the curveballs. They're going to give you the funny looks and the odd questions that maybe canon characters wouldn't, within their character tropes, be able to consider. So, and there's a lot to going into creating canon characters that complement as well as contrast the canon ones. One technique in particular I needed with this one is that this was before I got on the flight wagon. This is before I didn't see a romance type relationship between Fang and Lightning. I did not see it. I saw their interaction. I saw something more of like a collision of wills. The unstoppable force meets the immovable object, almost a sibling sort of rivalry that Lightning didn't have with Sarah, but and yet Fang and Lightning were still friends, I guess. I mean, I can see where people are coming from now that I've examined it a little more closely, but at the time, I didn't see it. It really it never crossed my mind, though I knew it was kind of out there. I just didn't get it. So I wanted to craft something a little more sisterly between them, something that just two people desperate for family, and all they needed was each other, I guess. They were kind of two sides of the same coin, just not, in love. Of course, I have seen the error of my ways by now, and I have made amends, so to speak. But I still think I made their character dynamic function for this story, even if it wasn't romantic. It was still caring and empathic and, considerate to one another. But that's beside the point. The canon characters. I wanted characters that could be potential love interests for Lightning, Fang, etc., etc. All the characters you meet, they have their counterparts. And that was huge in creating the original characters, is how the role they would play in relation to canon. And so I've got them kind of paired off with little notes in my notebook on the role they were meant to play. But Taehan, I wanted the most flawed hero I could possibly create. I wanted the most unlikely, unwilling protagonist that I had ever created, and I've created some pretty stubborn mules as far as protagonists go, but Han was something else. He was I guess you could say he was the epitome of bad shit happening to good people. He was that person that had never really done any harm, but was constantly harmed, just for the sheer reason of chance happens to us all. He was a victim of the random, and that kind of adds to that really fleshed him out. It gave me a foundation of what can I do with a hero that doesn't want to be a hero? What can I do with this reluctant character? It's kind of hard to describe him in a way, but how can I draw this character in to do what's right in spite of, the risks and his own personal demons and his issues that he had to deal with. I mean, as you go through the story, you realize he's just full of so much pain, and he shut himself down so hard. He just wants to be left alone, which, I don't blame him. I think in a way Taehan's a reflection of myself, and most of the time I just want to be left alone. Don't bother me. But most of all, he just doesn't want to hurt, and that's a way that I managed to link him with Lightning, is that she shut herself down also. She's just put such a hard grip on her emotional facilities that just, because she doesn't want to feel it. She doesn't want to handle the loss. She just wants to push it away, just reach that zero state and just keep pushing forward. Whereas Han preferred to he didn't want to move backwards or forward. He just wanted to be let be. And that really added to his sincerity. Those few glimpses in the beginning of his capacity to feel, his capacity to care, his even his capacity to laugh was really genuine when it finally showed itself. And I found that to be really satisfying for me as a writer, because I could watch this character grow from one thing to the next, along with canon characters that would grow to reach my goals for them. So it just... canon characters play a huge part in creating your original characters. It's something you always want to keep in mind when you're crafting your new faces for your fan fictions. Excuse me. And Han was a great device for Lightning to be humanized in the eyes of the reader, because in the game she's almost deified, and in the second one she practically is deified. Her emotions are still shut down, but you see glimpses of it off and on, especially in like Requiem for the Goddess DLC. You see more of that, but I'm hoping in Lightning Returns we'll see a whole lot more. I would give anything just to see that woman break down and cry. Not because I'm sick, but because that would just be such a wonderful display of emotion on her part. But I'm getting off topic. Han was an excellent device to humanize Lightning, in that she had to basically, in a way, face herself. She had to see her behavior in a more scrutinizing fashion, because nobody wants to scrutinize themselves, and she certainly didn't want to do that. Not in that facet. She felt like she had a right, I guess. She had an almost entitlement to her apathy, I guess you could say. And Han was just a really great device to expose that to her and force her to look at it and realize that's not what life's about. It's not about shutting down and shutting it out. It's about coping. And, bringing in those around you to help you cope, because nobody should have to do it by themselves. Then we come to Fang and Bard, or Seamus McBardian, the satyr. I know, I'm so sick to think that Fang would bang a satyr. I don't know where that came from. I guess I just had a weird day. I drank a little bit writing this one, so I don't remember if I drank a bit brainstorming, but Bard was just a lovable idea. You had this clumsy, quirky, cowardly little goat man with floppy ears and a big nose and big teeth and little knobby knees, covered in hair. And I fell in love with him almost from the very beginning. He was one of the first illustrations I did, and I was like, I like this guy. This is a guy I would want to be my personal friend. I would want to hang out with this guy. And he was also a great device for me personally to practice writing with an accent. That almost became his sole purpose, other than I needed a different kind of character to further balance out the cast. I needed I needed an obvious protagonist that didn't exactly have the chops to back up his mouth, or his enthusiasm, I guess you could say. His enthusiasm was amazing, but he was such a shrimp. He's a bit of a wiener. But I love him. He's precious. And I thought, someone that needed to be taken care of to a degree would have been perfect for Fang to relate to. Someone who had lost a lot, as we realized near the end of the story that he lost his whole family in a flood. and then how Fang had lost most of her family in the past. It was something that could bring them together. But he also had that fun-loving nature, but just not the same breed of fun that Fang enjoyed, I guess. But it was something that they could really come together on, and he was another way for me to practice someone falling helplessly in love with someone else, like love at first sight. I've never really been able to pull that off, and Bard was the perfect weapon of choice for me to do that with, and I think I managed that pretty well. He just was so helplessly in love with her, and I managed to stay away from the saccharine arsenic of purple literature to express that. So I felt like I really grew. I matured in my romantic considerations with that pairing, and it just seemed like Fang needed someone. Fang needed someone that she only partially needed to take care of. She didn't, have to be watching over all the time. Someone she could have fun with, the kind of fun the kind of fun you can't have with your friends. You can only have with someone who truly understands and appreciates you and is open to you. So Bard was just adorable. I loved writing him. He's such a treat. And then we have, getting more into the OCs, we got Beth and Donovan. I knew, I knew it before the readers did, but considering what I was planning to put Vanille through, which we'll discuss later, she was going to need a refuge. She was going to need a, parental pair to kind of offset the damage that was going to occur. Somebody that could be that bedrock, that stable, that mooring for her during the really, really difficult times. Someone that could just remind her it's going to be okay. And while, I forced Donovan in particular to remind her, I master, you slave, that discussion, it was still better than having no one, I guess. When you're really just desperate and alone, all you need is just someone there, not necessarily to tell you what you want to hear, but someone who can just hang on to you and remind you, it's even if you fall apart, I'm here to catch you. So, and I really wanted to explore that because I'd never had that solely, serving personality, someone that was simply there, to help you feel better. Even if you didn't like what they have to say, they were there for you. They were there to hold you up, and it was really fun to explore that. And they're a cute old couple. I mean, old people love. You don't get much better than that. Tor and Miriam. Miriam was fun. I'll admit it. She's got to be one of the most batshit crazy psychopaths I've ever written in my career, and I adored making her the bitch she turned out to be. Even the artwork of her, I was really impressed with just how colorful that she was, how odd she was, how explosively odd she could be. And I managed to bring that up just by watching, crime shows, crime psychology shows. And I was like, yeah, I need to try this. I needed to make her one of these. And I couldn't believe what I was able to do. Some of the language I used to describe, just the way she talked, really seemed to tell me, and probably some of the readers, just how sick she was. And Tor, behind every big man is a woman holding his leash, and Tor was that perfect example of that all-consumed servant personality. And while, he didn't talk much, he didn't play that big of a role, he was still an extension of Miriam. It was like the masculine to the feminine. That was the balance. And that he was much more physically abusive towards Vanille and towards other humans, whereas Miriam was more emotionally abusive. And while, she did administer some of the physical abuse, it was mostly, her tone of voice, the mental anguish that she administered that really made them just a wicked attraction. They were a deadly couple, and I was really impressed with what I was able to do with it. Then we got Casa and Hassan, the Blood Chiefs. I wanted villains that you had to try to hate, and I think I succeeded in spades with this couple. In the beginning, I intentionally misled the reader to think Hassan and his wife were good people, and in a way they were. They were a lot less antagonistic than some of their other vampire blood chief counterparts. However, they were still blood chiefs. They were still in control. And I had to make sure that the reader knew that. And especially how Hassan played off with his twin, Tazim, I had to remind the reader, this isn't what it seems. And I had to do it carefully leading up to the big one, the how to put it, the game he often plays with his twin, with his women. I had to lead you up. I had to set the stage, and then punch you in the face. My readers were so pissed off after everything I did to that poor girl. But there's kind of a psychological reason why I just put her through the ringer, and I'll get to that too. And Tazim in and of himself, I didn't want him and his brother both to be difficult to hate. I wanted Tazim to be extremely hateable. I wanted him to have a incredibly punchable face, so to speak. And I think I pulled that off pretty easy. I needed a character whose behavior was socially acceptable, and he knew it. And that sometimes makes the worst villains villains that know that they won't get in trouble, because they're the most brazen. When they're convinced they can get away with it, they will do it. They will do everything. Anything to get that next high, anything to make themselves feel good, to satisfy that drive, whatever the drive is. So that's a good way to create a villain. Is what they're doing acceptable? Are they afraid of being caught? Or are they convinced they can't get caught? That's a wonderful device. Wonderful things to ask yourself when you're creating a villain, especially your original villain. So it's something that you can keep in mind. And sometimes a villain doesn't always have to be obvious. Sometimes some of the best villains are the ones you don't see coming. So that's another thing to consider. And Sabine. I never meant Sabine to be a villain. And in a way, she's not a villain. She takes on that role of the avenging angel, I suppose. But her main purpose was to show that even villains can be loved. Because it's true. Adolf Hitler, he was married twice, if I'm not mistaken. So there was a capacity in him to feel and return love, as surprising to some of you as that may be. Vlad the Impaler was married a couple of times. So there was a capacity in love with him. And I'm not saying he was a villain, but he was definitely an odd bird. So villains can be loved. And I needed Sabine as a device to show that, but she grew into so much more without my even noticing it. This story did that to me a lot. Not to say that I'm upset, it's just it drives me crazy. Where I think I have all my ducks in a row and I have all the control and I've got my claws in it. Something new happens, and I didn't see it coming. Let's see, Shiloh. I love Shiloh. He's adorable. He inspired me by the race of the Leonin from the Magic the Gathering series. And I just wanted someone fun-loving. I wanted someone, a little egotistical, but cuddly. He treasures his family. He treasures his life. He's happy. He wants for nothing. And I also needed a odd character, a non-human character, to be Han's true friend. Because obviously humans didn't much care for him. So it seemed apropos for him to find refuge among more than human creatures. The story also allowed me to really play off of how exotic is interesting, not necessarily a bad thing. Different is good. Different is fascinating. It's not abhorrent or abrasive. So Shiloh was and his people, his family, were a great device to show that, people that are different, they really can come together and, get along and learn from each other. And Shiloh is just a pleasure to write for. He's such a whore. But, and he also, I guess, acted as Tehan's voice. When he wouldn't speak for himself, Shiloh would kind of give his little feline hints, as felines often do. They never tell you everything, they just give you hints. But he was a lot of fun. And then there's Francisco and Raul. They were my first experiment in homosexual pairings, and I had a great load of fun writing them. And they really they were the beginning of my road to comfort writing homosexual couples. So Yeah, kudos to you guys, and they were a blast to write too. Francisco was a trip. He just the mad scientist blowing himself up on a regular basis, and then you have the more grounded one, yet still kind of fun one. You know, they just life was a game to them, and as poorly as it ended, they didn't lose that spirit. Let's see. Dash and Helm. And originally they didn't have names. They were just the long-haired one and the short-haired one. That's pretty much how I described it until I realized, you know what? Nah, I've got more things for them to do. They need names. But in reality, they were comic relief practice later on. But they start out as, I guess, what you could call plot ponies. Something, just a little term I've coined for characters that are unaware of what they're doing, but what they're doing has huge consequences on everybody else. Because in reality, their meddling at the Crystal Pillar really started the story, started the main plot of bringing the pillar down and separating Vanille and Fang, and etc. etc. So while they seemed frivolous, Lard Cannon, anyone, they seemed frivolous, but they had their purpose. And then there was Lyra. While seemingly, I guess, out of left field, she completed the circle for Tehan. She was another representation of the person he really was, the person that he wanted to be, I think, in his heart of hearts, but didn't really know how to be anymore because he was so full of hurt and bitterness, and he was a tired old man, and he didn't know what else to be. So Lyra was a great device to just bring him out of his shell and to further explore his culture. Let's see, what else I got in my notebook. One task I always set out to do, especially when I'm working on a fan fiction, is to humanize canon characters if I feel like they've been too lofty in their original media, which I did with Fang right out of the gate, with the battle with the vampires, with the scarring and the weakness, the sickness, you know, being attacked by the dogs, because bad shit happens. I don't care how powerful you are or how powerful you think you are. You could be God's gift to whatever it is you're good at. You can still get fucked up. And I really needed to explore that with Fang because, I mean, to me even, she's perfect. She's just, you know, 10 feet tall and bulletproof. But I had to bring her down a couple notches. Same thing with Lightning near the end. After her stint with recovery and sickness and the coma and everything, I had to bring them down a little bit. Let's see. The taboos I touched. Slavery. Rape. Suicide. Racial differences. Human trafficking. It all started out as a personal experiment. I needed to see what I could do with untouchable subjects. A lot of writers do it, especially when they're first starting out. They want to explore these things, but I think somehow some of the sanctity is lost in translation somewhere. But to a degree, for those of us who have experienced severe depression and abuse and self-harm and suicidal thoughts and everything, some of the sanctity has to be lost so it doesn't hurt so much. For those of you that have survived those kind of situations, I guess the holy glow is lost, or it's kind of hard to describe. But, I mean, yes, you have to approach these subjects with sobriety, with consideration, with some class, but you also have to be upfront about what it really is. And I feel like I was able to succeed in doing that. I feel like that I was able to approach it in a very real way and execute it in a very real yet sympathetic way. Vanille was my abuse mule, I guess. Mostly because I'm kind of, I guess deep down I'm a little bit bitter on the events of the War of Transgression. By all rights and purposes are her fault. She ran away, and everybody else paid for that, it seems like. And the vindictive part of me felt like she needed to pay for that too. So that was kind of the driving force behind that. It's but but that, thankfully, that didn't become all of what the story was. I think deep down the story was about facing up to your good and your bad, facing up to your fears and your vices and your own sins, and learning to grow past them initially by forgiving yourself, and then realizing it's not all over. What more can I do with my life? I still have time left. There's got to be something I can do to make it better. And but we didn't really approach that theme until, near the end of the story, when the initial threat was dissipated and all our characters had left was to look in the mirror and see themselves and to realize, that's over now. What am I going to do with me? And yeah, I took some liberties with the characters. I'll admit it. I won't deny it. but Lightning's slight racism towards Han, towards Paultians in general. I guess it's that internalized cocoon mentality of, Pulse being hell. And she kind of took that out on Han mostly because, I mean, who wouldn't? He's all scruffy and scarred up and doesn't talk much and just angry and cranky all the time. You don't think a person very sophisticated when they walk around and act like that. So, but I had to make her pay for that in her battle with Sabine. And when she realized that Sabine, behaved as a native Paultian, I think deep down, something I didn't address in the story is that there's no way she could be her equal. There's no way that this Paultian savage is going to beat me. And then she tore her a new one, which was a little... that was kind of actually fun to do for me because, well, I'm sick like that. And the whole snake thing was just something I hadn't tried before and something I really wanted to give a shot and see what I could do with. I thought the snake looked pretty cool if you ever check out the artwork, which I suggest you do. But yeah, I tried a lot of things as far as with characters and character drama, and yeah, I thought it was really fun. And I had to address, like, character guilt, like with Vang. She was holding on to so much guilt for what happened to Vanille, and she felt like she was responsible, like she should have been there. Which, I don't know, maybe... I think that would be very much like Fang, is that she would feel guilty for the bad things that would happen to Vanille, because she's so attached to being her protector, that it just... I would imagine it would eat her up inside, and I had to explore that, if for no other reason than just for my sake. Let me see. Tazim's death. That was a major turning point in the story. He was going to die. When I created him and decided what and all he was going to do with and without his brother, I knew he had to bite it. No pun intended, considering he's a vampire. He had to bite it. But there was one thing I had to do before I could let him die, and I had to make sure that Vanille got some sort of vengeance. I had to explore her less than pure and good and loving side, and show a little vindictiveness, and have her at least hurt him somehow physically in a way that would really just be impactful to the reader before I could kill him off. It was just that had to happen. There are sometimes when you're writing, you realize this has to happen first. This has to. It won't function. It won't have any meaning without this one thing happening. And that was a great example of that. And just, he had to feel pain before he could die. And it had to be administered from his victim. He had to become the victim and victimized by the one he victimized. So it's that, I guess, cruel irony, though I'm sure from the reader's point of view it wasn't cruel at all. It was very appropriate. I didn't get much word on it from my readers, which I'm not surprised, because like I said, it wasn't that big of a deal to what few fans I had. My Paultian language. I'm going to immediately tell you, it was all completely bullshit. All I did was follow some language phonetic rules from Latin and from English, and basically all I did was what sounded good. I would just speak gibberish to myself and then write down, hey, this sounds nice, I like how this sounds, so what does it mean? I'm adding to the glossary daily, still, so I don't know. And I'm bringing it back a little bit with, pardon me, I'm bringing it back a little bit with Lords of Chaos, which I'm still struggling to write, unfortunately. And so I don't know. It's just something I felt like I needed to just add to the validity of what I was trying to do with Blood Tithe culturally. I had to flesh out the Pulsion cultures. I had to make them unique yet similar to one another, and I had to validate it with a unified language, as well as unified appearances like the Saris, but the colors were changing, and they worship different forms of animal spirit deities, and so on and so forth, and they had their own music and their own dance, and things like that. They had festivals and everything, so it was all part of the picture I felt like I needed to paint to really validate what I was doing, to validate the Pulsion people. So, but yeah, that Blood Tithe was an amazing project. I never for once thought it would get as big as it did. Over 500 pages, 50 chapters, over 100 illustrations, a lot of which I didn't post, but still, they played a huge part in me growing as an artist. And nowadays, I'm getting a little more word on it here and there, and a lot of people are pleased with the time that they've spent, giving my work a chance, and it's just been really wonderful, hearing people just saying they enjoyed it. They took something pleasant, something positive away from this over year-long labor. I binged so hard on some of these chapters. I was awake for almost 24 hours straight, just pounding out 2 or 3 chapters in a single sitting near the end of this, and it took me almost a year, and I wouldn't want that time back for anything. Blood Tithe was an amazing personal triumph, and it really helped me grow. And if you haven't read it, that's okay. I don't blame you. It's a long undertaking, but if you got time on your hands and you want a bit of a yarn to bide your time, go ahead and check it out on fanfiction.net. I don't have it on DA, but that's because that would take me forever, and I'm really lazy these days. Plus, I'm kind of bogged down with work and school. But, well, thank you for joining me for this new episode of Ask the Author on Blood Tithe. If you want more information on the story, go read it. That's about the only thing I can tell you, because I don't have that much more information to give you. I just wanted to discuss characters and where it came from, and building all the elements and putting them together. It's just, holy crap, man. What a ride. But thank you for joining me, and if you want any more information, you can just comment or leave a question on the YouTube page or on my DA page. If you want to get in touch with me, that's cool. You just want to talk, that's cool too. Just contact me, let me know, and if you want, we can figure something out and have a chat. This is Lucky Fire Rabbit from DeviantArt, also Shadoobie on fanfiction.net, and this was Ask the Author on Blood Tithe. Catch you on the flip side.